2:30.
2:30. Hello everyone, my name is Rusty.
Hey, Rusty.
I'd like to welcome you to our Nar-Anon Workshop. What the hell is a boundary? This workshop, I didn't announce this morning at our beginning one, is being sponsored by the Nar-Anon group of Huntsville. We call ourselves BOAT, Beating Our Addictions Together. We meet on Sundays at 3 to 4:30 and Thursdays at 8 o'clock on Governor's Drive where the air group of NA meets. So everyone's welcome. We have some literature at our booth. If you go up by the registration, if you hadn't already seen us, there's literature there, pamphlets, they're free. We have some books that are for sale if you're interested in some of our literature. I'd like to read the preamble. The Nar-Anon family groups are a worldwide fellowship for those affected by someone else's addiction. As a 12-step program, we offer our help by sharing our experience, strength, and hope. We carry the message of hope by letting others know that they are not alone, by practicing the 12 steps of Nar-Anon, and by changing our own attitudes. We will respect your anonymity. Our program is not a religious one, but a spiritual way of life. And we will open this meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the reading of the prayer for the growth of our fellowship. Prayer. God, we thank you for the peace and serenity we are finding as we learn to put our addicts in your hands, one day at a time, and cease trying to change them. We are grateful that you helped us to find our way here, and we ask that you help those still alone and in pain because of the addiction of a friend or loved one. Please help us to find our way, their way to these rooms, so that we may give back the gifts we have been so freely given, as well as give us a chance to share our experience, strength, and hope with those suffering the isolation created by living with an addict. As we try to reach out to others with our fellowship, help us to be ever mindful of our traditions. We are trusting in your love and concern for our addicts and us, and we ask that you help us to search always for your will for us and for those that we care about. Let's see. Then I'm going to read the newcomers welcome and turn it over to our chairperson, Jim. The newcomers welcome. The Nar-Anon family group is primarily for you who know or have known a feeling of desperation concerning the addiction problem of someone very near to you. We have traveled that unhappy road too and found the answer with serenity and peace of mind. When you come into the family group, you are no longer alone, but among true friends who understand your problems few others could. We will respect your confidence and anonymity as we know you will respect ours. We hope to give you the assurance that no situation too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to be overcome. Our program is not a religious one, but a spiritual way of life. It's based on the 12 steps of Nar-Anon. We have found that the working of these steps will bring the solution to practically any problem. We urge you to take this program and its 12 steps seriously. It has been as helpful to us as the Narcotics Anonymous program is to the addict. We only ask for the wisdom and courage to see ourselves as we really are, to do something about ourselves with the help of a higher power as we understand this, and for the grace to release our addicts with love and cease trying to change them. Keep an open mind and attend as many meetings as possible. Feel free to share during the meeting. You may ask questions after the meeting. You will soon make new friends and feel very much a part of the group, with the understanding that addiction is a disease and the realization that we are powerless over it, as well as over other people's lives. We are ready to do something useful and constructive with our own. Then and only then can we be of any help to others. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Jim. There you go.
We got steps this time.
We'll let the old man use a step and I'll step up. I want to echo Rusty's welcome to everyone. Glad to see you here today and thankful for this turnout. I was sitting out earlier at our booth with the literature, and I was sitting there by myself, and a guy comes by and he wanted to know what Nar-Anon was, and he really just didn't know, and I understand that because relatively to AA we're a very young group, but we're friends and family of addicts. Our program is very much like NA. A lot of our stuff comes from NA, most of it does. Our steps, our traditions, they've all came down from Bill Wilson down through the whole group. But anyway, he came by and He said, well, the reason I asked you that is because you didn't look like an addict. Well, personally, I don't know what an addict looks like. And then he goes on and he says, I thought you were a preacher. And I said, well, I don't know which one would be worse. But we had a good conversation and we had a laugh over it. So it was really great. So at this time, I'm going to ask members to come up and read the 12 steps and the 12 traditions.
Hi, I'm Susan. The 12 steps of Nar-Anon family groups. Just a second. We admitted we were powerless over the addict, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Yeah. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Denise. The 12 traditions of Nar-Anon family groups. Our group experience suggests that the unity of the Nar-Anon family groups depends upon our adherence to these traditions. Our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends on unity. Number 2, for our group purposes, there is but one authority, a loving God, as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. Number 3, the relatives of addicts, when gathered for mutual aid, may call themselves a Nar-Anon family group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of addiction in a relative or friend. Number 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting our other Nar-Anon family groups or NA as a whole. Number 5, each Nar-Anon family group has but one purpose, to help families of addicts. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of Nar-Anon, by encouraging and understanding our addicted relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of addicts. Number 6, our family groups ought never to endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary spiritual aim. But although a separate entity, we should always cooperate with Narcotics Anonymous. Number 7, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Number 8, Nar-Anon 12-step work should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Number 9, our groups as such ought never to be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Number 10, the Nar-Anon family groups have no opinion on outside issues, hence our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. Number 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, films, internet, and other forms of mass media. We need to guard with special care the anonymity of all NA members. Number 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I also passed out 2 readings, one which is called About Addiction, and the other is Changing Ourselves, and both of these have quite a bit to say within themselves about boundaries.
Hi, I'm Liz.
Hey, Liz.
I have about addiction. We have learned that addiction is an illness. It is a physical, mental, and spiritual disease that affects every area of life. It can be arrested but never cured. We have found that compulsive use of drugs does not indicate a lack of affection for the family. It is not a matter of love but of illness. The addict's inability to control their use of drugs is a symptom of the disease of addiction. Even when they know what will happen when they take the first drink, pill, or fix, they will do so. This is the insanity we speak of in regard to this disease. Only complete abstinence from the use of drugs, including alcohol, can arrest this disease. No one can prevent the addict's use of drugs. When we accept that addiction is a disease and that we are powerless over it, we become ready to learn a better way to live.
I'm Rose.
Hey, Rose.
Changing ourselves. Addiction is like a chain reaction. It is a disease which affects the addict as well as the family members, friends, and co-workers. We try to control, cover up, and take on the responsibilities of the addict. The sickness spreads to those of us who care the most. Eventually, we begin to feel used and unhappy. We worry, we lose trust, and we become angry. The addict blames us, and we feel guilty. If only something or someone would change. When we discover Nar-Anon, we find others with the same feelings and problems. We learn we cannot control the addict or change him. We have become so addicted to the addict that it is difficult to shift the focus back to ourselves. We find that we must let go and turn to faith in a higher power. By working the steps, following the traditions, and using the tools of the program, we begin with the love and help of our higher power and others to change ourselves. As we reach out for help, we become ready to reach out a helping hand and heart to those in need of Nar-Anon. We understand. We do recover. Slowly, the new person emerges. Change is taking place.
Nice, Rose.
Give you a little bit of background on myself. I've been in, actually I started in Al-Anon, and then when Rusty and Rose started Nar-Anon over in Huntsville, I started going over to there. I actually live here in Decatur. But with those two together, in May I will have 4 years in the program. It never ceases to amaze me that I learn something every day, even when I'm not in a meeting. I learn so much more in a meeting. I learned something sitting on that chair right there just a minute ago. I told a lie a few minutes ago. I told you the guy told me that I didn't look like an addict and that I wasn't, but I am an addict. I'm addicted to my son, my 33-year-old son. I'm addicted to him. And that's why I attend this program. And my addiction is just, I don't want to put any play down on it, but my addiction, I did some of the craziest things you have ever heard of. And there's probably some I can't even tell because I might go to jail for it. And that's the God's truth. But I will have to keep those into myself. But that's how bad of addiction I had to him. And part of that addiction, part of how his reaction was, there were no boundaries. I didn't know what a boundary was. I looked up several definitions of boundary, and it's all jumbo mumbo jargon. Boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify for themselves what are reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave around them, and how they will respond when someone steps outside those limits. Well, that's so clean and easy, but when you are dealing with someone that you love, and they have an addiction problem, which is a disease, and until I came into this program, I never thought of it as a disease. My dad was an alcoholic. I thought he could quit any time he wanted to. He just didn't want to. Unfortunately, my dad passed away before I got in this program. I wished I could go back and make amends to him for things I've said, but I can't. But I can get that good feeling in my heart that I know now, and I just pray and hope that he knows somehow that's how I feel now. But anyway, with boundaries, I didn't really set any boundaries, and even when I have two sons, and I have one that has an addiction problem. The other one actually had an addiction problem too. He had an addiction to food. He'd gotten up to about 360 pounds, and just give you a hope for everything. But today he weighs 195. So, but addiction comes in many ways, and he had to redo his whole life to get to where he's at, just like I've had to redo mine. And my younger son, the 33-year-old, has had to do his. But when it comes to boundaries, when I was raising both of them, I didn't put a lot of boundaries on them. And I think I look back now, the reason I didn't put the boundaries on them is, well, one of those reasons was fear, because I didn't want to be rejected by them. I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to trust in me and come with me with things. One did, one didn't. And people say, well, when they start talking about the 3 C's, about causing it, one of the 3 C's is cause it. But I thought a long time about, maybe I did something to cause my youngest son to be an addict. But then I said, well, I raised them both the same. But it's handed down from his granddad, to be honest with you. But anyway, I didn't put a lot of boundaries on them, and it really hurt later on. So boundaries are good not only for people with addictions, but it's also good for children coming up. And then I really didn't know how to do boundaries, and some of the things we'll read and talk about today are how to put boundaries or limits with some love and with some care. My boundaries were, if we did what I call the DD all the time. That's the dysfunctional dance. He called me something, I called him something. I tried to call him something a little worse. And here I am. At that time, I was in my late 50s, and I'm still doing these childish things. But, if he decided he wanted to pass a lick, I'd pass a lick with him. If whatever he decided to do, I would retaliate worse than what he did. That's why I call it the dysfunctional dance, because both of those were very dysfunctional. But he had a reason to be dysfunctional. And I really didn't. I just didn't know how to react and how to handle things. And I do now, thanks to this program. But, you get to thinking about boundaries. If you think you don't have any boundaries on you, try to spend more money than you've got in the bank. See what happens there. If think you don't have boundaries on you, don't put any gas in your car, eventually run out. These are not emotional boundaries, though. What we're talking about today are emotional boundaries. I've always been a big sports fan, and that's that when I got to thinking about boundaries, it came up on me that in baseball you have a foul pole out in the left field and the right field, and if it goes to the left on the left field or to the right on the right field, if the ball goes to that side of the pole, it's a foul ball. If it goes inside the pole, then it's a good hit, good home run. But that's one type of boundary. But I got to thinking, hey, those folks have got somebody to tell them whether it went in or out. They've got an official. Same way with football. You've got out of bounds. I've seen quarterbacks, and I know everybody here has, I've seen quarterbacks run for out of bounds so he can't get hit. He knows there's a boundary there, and he's safe on the other side of it. And if he does get hit, who hits him is going to be penalized. But they're going to be penalized by an official. Well, I've got an official too, but I got to turn it over to him, and that's my higher power. If I'll turn it over to him and let him lead me in the right way, he will set those boundaries for me. He will give me the road to travel and how to handle those. And just a few more things. If I was raised in Tennessee, lived in a small town, and this was one time boundaries. I really learned what boundaries were. When I was 14 years old, the summer that I was 14 years old, I had 5 buddies, and we all stayed together all the time. Most of the time we camped every night. But we would go back up in the mountains. We lived right at the foot of Sewanee Mountain, which is 52 miles from here. And we'd go back up in the mountain, we'd roam all day. I didn't partake of it, but I had 2 buddies. They loved to catch snakes. And they would catch them and put them in a what we called a tow sack, which was a burlap bag. But anyway, we were back up in the mountains one day, and there was a sign that said no trespassing. Well, we didn't take much heed to it because we never had before on any of them. So we went on up a little bit, and we should have respected that boundary, because about that time something went pew, sounded like a .22 rifle. So we go up a little bit more, and pew, again it's whizzing over our head. And one of the boys says, "There's a steel up there, we better get our butt out of here." And that's what it was. There was a steel up there. And we didn't respect their boundaries, so they retaliated with it. And they just let us know that, hey, don't come up here any farther. But that was one time that I wish that I had looked at that boundary and that no trespassing sign. Because it's a funny feeling when you're coming back down that mountain as fast as you can and don't know what they're going to do. Anyway, I have 3 people that are going to share with us today on boundaries, and y'all can draw straws for who goes first or who goes last or who does what. But at this time, I will let them come up and let them speak with you for a few minutes on boundaries.
Boundaries. What the hell is a boundary? Experience, strength, and hope. I would like to begin with thanks and gratitude to Narcotics Anonymous for helping us to work on our Step 12, and especially Air Group, Huntsville, Alabama. Nar-Anon is a 12-step program coming down from Al-Anon. We're a fellowship to recognize that loved ones, too, have self-defeating, damaging behaviors from living with the addiction disorder of a spouse, family member, or friend. My name is Susan, a grateful member of Nar-Anon. I don't understand boundary. Boundaries eluded me for many years into right now. Addiction put us in a life and death struggle, my husband and I. Our very survival is at risk. All manner of our life was deteriorating, but it didn't show on the outside or to onlookers. My husband's addiction resulted in his staying away, not coming home, often for many days. I was isolated in a terror I had never known. I was paying attention at meetings. I could set a boundary. So I set the obvious boundary that he must be home or send word. This, of course, didn't happen. He broke my boundary as soon as I set it. To establish it again or reinforce, I would try a text or a voicemail. Either form would end up as much as 2 hours later with some 30 attempts to leave an even-tempered message. It would begin in reason or reasonably, reminding him of my boundary for him, but would inevitably turn to rage and threatening words seldom used. There is a character and time limit on messages, which I reached in every attempt. On the phone, the attempt ended up in rage. Hit 3, try again. Calm words, then rage words. Hit 3, try again, repeat, and on and on. Finally, I knew this was a failure. I couldn't stay in this marriage, but couldn't follow through with threats. Slowly, through meetings and a listening sponsor who never pushed or advised, I came to the realization that the boundary was for me. I mean, how many times would I go through this, hooked into his actions, depending on his care, wishing he would do what I so reasonably wanted? The truth finally sunk in. It begins with me. And so it follows as the night the day. I saw my actions and reactions were all my own. It had nothing to do with him. The less, the better, in fact. I could hang up, disconnect the phone, and make a boundary to not pick it up again. That's pretty cut and dried. Would I be able to do it? Once it was said in a meeting, unconditional love is free will. God loves me that much to wait. God must wait until my coming to higher power in willingness. It's not the 12 giant step program. It's just 12 steps. And on any given day and in any given moment, just a step. The length of my stride and in my own time. And God is waiting for me. When I was ready to say, I am not happy, I want the marriage to end, I did so with authority. He believed me and stepped into recovery. With this experience, I've discovered that being a loving and empowering married person requires me to be first a loving and empowered single person. Then can marriage grow. I can tell you in perfect truth, experience, love, and faith, higher power will be crystal clear on the boundary. Higher power will give the strength to back it up when you are ready and not before. Let it begin. Start by doing what's necessary, then what's possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. St. Francis, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, my name is still Liz.
Liz.
Okay. Of course, this is all about boundaries, and I'm going to try to explain my take on that too. It's taken me many years to realize just how much my addict controlled me. You know, you think you're controlling them, And you kind of open your eyes and realize that they're controlling you by what you do. So I had heard a lot of stories from him. Most of them, if not all, were lies to get what he needed from me. And it worked every time. When I questioned him, he would become angry with me because how dare I question him? As if I thought he was lying. And I knew he lied a lot because I'd already caught him in a whole lot of them. Big ones. But since I loved him, and I wanted to fix him, as a good enabler should, I would tell myself just one more time. Because I knew this time it would work. It was going to work this time. He would change. I just knew he would. He would see how much he needed to get help, how much I loved him, how much I was trying to help. Well, guess what? It never worked. We both just kept doing the same thing over and over again. Neither of us got the help we needed. I just didn't realize I needed it. He needed it to stop his addiction, and I needed it to stop mine. I prayed to God a lot for him to guide me, to give me something, help me find something that would help him. I prayed for strength for myself, but I was still trying to control my addict, not letting go of him. Finally, after much prayer and many, many years of trying and running out of things to try, I didn't know what else to do. I really just kind of was at the end of my rope. So I cried out again, called on God, and he gave me a nice clear message, which I finally listened to, which was letting go of him and getting out of his way and letting God have him. And of course, that's what I did. That was almost 2 years ago, and I'm in recovery now from enabling my addict. I'm so very grateful to my Nar-Anon family for their support and for the knowledge that I have gained from being a part of this group, for helping me to understand that I need to take care of myself to stay healthy, because it will draw you down and it will make you sick, and all kinds of things happen to your body when you're under a lot of stress. So I have set boundaries. Because of this group, I have set boundaries that have helped me gain control of my life and my own sanity. I no longer allow my addict to control me. I no longer allow him to push the buttons, to draw me into arguments, or make me angry, or feel guilty when I say no to his demands. I now know that my trying to control him and fix him kept both of us in unhealthy places. I now know I can still love him, be here for him, without trying to run his life. I can still let him know that I care without the enabling part of me. I know that the only one that I can change and fix is myself. I rely on my God to help me stay strong and to accept whatever my addict's choices are. Even when I don't agree with those choices, they're still his choices. I now know how wrong I was to continue to try and control my addict over and over again. I just could not see at that time how much I was holding him back from letting him face the consequences of his own actions and grow up and take charge of his own life. No matter how much I wanted to fix him, They were his choices, and he needed to make them. And he needed to suffer the consequences of whatever it was, just like we all do. I've done it many times in my life. I've done things in my life that weren't very wise or very smart or very good. And I've had to suffer from those consequences, but guess what? I grew. I grew. I grew because of those consequences, because of the actions that I've taken. I learned from those. So you learn a lot by falling down and picking yourself up and dusting yourself off and going on. You learn a lot. I'm an enabler, but I'm getting better. And I'm like so many, I'm not totally fixed. I realize that those times are going to come along when I'm going to get that phone call again, when I'm going to have to hear his voice on the other end of that phone or at my door. And I'm going to have to say no. And when you love somebody, that's not easy. But it's for their sake. Because that's the only way they can really get better and heal. And take a stand and change their life. So I ask this group to help me be strong. So when I go to that group, just like anyone else goes to a group, I look for that support to help me get through what I need to do. Thank you.
I'm Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Liz and I share the same addict in our life. We're married, and so we share that same addict. Prior to coming to Nar-Anon, I didn't have any problem setting boundaries for the addict in our life. Matter of fact, I set them, and I set them very loudly. You have to understand that the addict in our life is an adult, older than a lot of people in this room, and he didn't live in our home. So telling him that he couldn't use drugs in our home, that wasn't a boundary that I needed to set. But there are some other boundaries, and I set them very loudly. You will not take anything from us again, or you will suffer the consequences of that. Your lying is unacceptable. Your disrespectful attitude will not be accepted in this house. See, I didn't have any problems setting boundaries for him. But you know what? Before I went to Nar-Anon, I never thought about, well, maybe you should set some boundaries for yourself. I was looking in our daily readings, and there was a quote from Robert Frost who said, "Good fences make good neighbors." And I could kind of relate to that because I can remember we had a neighbor one time, and it's a good thing we had a fence. Because I'm one of those guys that really kind of took care of my lawn and took care of my house and took pride on how it looked. Him not so much. So when I could understand the concept of fences, that hey, this is my side of the fence, and that's his side of the fence. What goes on this side of the fence, that's my business. What goes on his side of the fence is his business. So, my higher power started helping me have insight into boundaries. The other thing that kind of complicated this thing is, though he was an adult and he didn't live at home with us, we managed a trust for him. And the trust specifically said what money could be used for and not be used for. And of course, the trust didn't say you could buy drugs with it. But I found myself constantly worrying that the item that we did buy, did he go hawk it? Did he go sell it and buy drugs with it? And so I had to set some new boundaries. What's on his side of the fence and what's on my side of the fence? What's his business and what's my business? So I no longer have to be concerned on whether or not he paid his rent, paid his utility bills, or made his car payment or his car insurance. That was on him, not on me. Even though that money might have come out of the trust, it was his responsibility to do it and not mine. I'm one of those people that like to control, and I thought if I could control the addict enough that I could cure him, that he'd stop using. I remember one day that he purchased a motorcycle. And I was with him to make that purchase because the money came out of the trust and we had to go to the bank and do that. And I can remember when the deal was done and the keys were handed to him, he just took off. He just got on the motorcycle and took off, and I'm going, you just left me standing there. And I'm going, okay, what are you going to do next? Have you got money for gas? Are you going to call the insurance company and let them know you've got a new motorcycle, and are you going to take care of that? Well, I didn't hear from him for a couple of days, and so again, I'm trying to control, so what do? I call the insurance company and say, okay, he's got so you see, I didn't have set boundaries for myself. And so now I realize that I have to set those boundaries. But those boundaries are the fence around me, my stuff. That's the stuff I need to control. That's the stuff I need to be concerned about. So I've asked my higher power to give me discernment in that, to know the difference. I've asked my higher power to help me that when those things happen that I find displeasing, to respond in a different way than I had before. Because the anger, trying to shame them, none of that stuff worked. I've asked him to give me a different response to that. I was looking through some of the readings in our daily readings for boundaries, and I found in the thought for the day someone had reworded the serenity prayer. And I found this prayer so appropriate for me and so appropriate for setting boundaries. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one that I can, and the wisdom to know that it is me.
Thank you, Susan, Dan, and Liz. Each of you reminded me that, and I didn't say this before, but my boundaries were actually, the problem I had was I wanted to put boundaries on my addict, but I should have been putting boundaries on myself. And it's been a lot better for me since I've been able to do that. I actually had some quotes that I passed out and I was going to get folks to read. Denise, you want to read the first one?
We change our behavior when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. Consequences give us the pain that motivates us to change. Henry Cloud.
Thank you. Yeah, and basically what that said to me was that when I've had enough, then I've had enough. When I've bared so much pain and my life was in such disarray that I kicked the fear out of the way, and that fear being of not being loved by my son, that fear being of retaliations that he might make. But I kicked the fear out of the way, and it became where that it was easier to face that fear of him leaving and me not knowing where he was at than it was to keep having the dysfunctional life that we were having. And Rose, do you have one?
Setting boundaries is a way of caring for myself. It doesn't make me mean, selfish, or uncaring just because I don't do things your way. I care about me too.
Yeah, I learned setting boundaries that, like I said, they were for me. But as I told you earlier, I grew up with my dad being an alcoholic, so I was trained very well to take care of somebody else. I'll tell you, I probably got more stories than me and my dad. We both loved dirt track racing, and I was 12 years old when we went to a dirt track race on a Saturday night in Tennessee, and he got drunk. So here I am, a 12-year-old, and we live 6 miles away. I'm a 12-year-old, and he can't drive. He can't hardly even function. Well, fortunately, being raised in a small place like that, I already knew how to drive at 12. So guess who drove the 6 miles back home? I did. But, you know, that was me catering to him. He didn't, I mean, you know, he's got a 12-year-old with him. Why not take the responsibility or leave the 12-year-old at home? But the call of the alcohol sometimes is more than what he could take. But, let's say, Liz, you have one?
I do. When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated.
With my son, I didn't hold him accountable with anything at all. If it was money, I gave it to him. Whatever, you know, car. Just like Dan said, when it came to car insurance, I got the insurance on the car. I paid the insurance. And, you know, that wasn't his fault. That's my fault. And that's where I didn't have any boundaries set in place. And I was actually doing him wrong. I wasn't letting him grow. I wasn't letting him become his own person. Basically, I was trying to make him a clone out of me. But that didn't work. Dan?
Okay, I have a quote here from Henry Cloud. It says, boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom.
Yeah, when I first went into an Al-Anon meeting, one of the first things I heard was a lady there talk about, she always used the analogy, she would draw a circle around herself, and everything in that circle belonged to her, and everything outside that circle she did not have control over. It took me a long time to understand that. And I know there are circumstances, and that's why I use the analogy of a fence. Putting a fence around myself. Well, I have a problem with the fence because if I put the fence around myself, then I'm isolating myself. I'm not growing. I'm not doing the things I should do. But if I build that fence and I put a gate on it, then I can let who or what feelings or emotions I want in or out of that gate. So I had to become my own gatekeeper because I didn't have a gate. My wife is not here today. She has bronchitis, but you know, we had no social life. We got to where we didn't have any social life. We didn't want to go anywhere because somebody asked about our son. I mean, we didn't want to. So we just built that fence around us and just stayed in it. The only thing we had Buck in the fence was he was in the fence with us. And so now we finally moved him out of the fence and we've got a gate on it and we can do what we need to do to control the boundaries and to control our sanity because we were about to. But I've learned to use this program in so many ways. I'll tell you this right quick. My wife's not here, so I can tell it. My wife has this little thing or saying And it just got under my skin, and I would never say anything until finally I got in this program, and now she's quit saying it because I told her it annoyed me. I didn't get hateful or mean about. Before I might have got hateful or mean. She had this little thing where, let's say if we just finished eating and the dishes need to be put in the dishwasher, instead of saying, would you put the dishes in the dishwasher, she would always say, I'll let you put the dishwashers in the dishwasher. And that just got all over me. I said, what do you mean you'll let me do it? I said, you can ask me to do it, but you're not going to let me do it like it's some privilege. But that's just a small thing, but I would have never stood up that before. If you would, Denise, I want you to come up and I've got a reading I want you to do, and it's 350 in our sesh book. And that will be, if you have an electronic, it will be 12:15. And we'll read that one. And then I've got one more to read, and then we will.
Okay, I'm Denise. December 15th, Healthy Boundaries. Today, I am learning the importance of setting healthy boundaries for myself. I learned from past experiences that all my efforts to control and change my addicted loved one by pleading, crying, praying, and shaming would not make him stop using. My behavior made me emotionally sick. My anger turned inward and resulted in depression. My depression took such a strong hold of me that I feared being emotionally damaged for life. At Nar-Anon meetings, I am learning that I can set boundaries and reclaim my life. Boundaries are limits I set for myself. What I will or will not allow in my life. Boundaries are not limits I set for others. For example, I can choose to leave a party if someone's behavior affects me in a negative way. I can change an old pattern of enabling and say no. I used to engage in circular arguments with the addict. One of my new boundaries is to stop this behavior because it never improved anything. It only made me upset. Now, when I see I am arguing in circles, I stop. I look at the addict and say, "You may have a point. I would like to talk about something else." It does not mean I have to cave in to the addict's demand to be rescued from consequences. It simply means I stop arguing. Setting boundaries is a change in my behavior, and it does not always come easy. Many times, others criticize me when I change. However, I can set another boundary and choose not to let others' reactions change my decision to take care of myself. In Nar-Anon, I am learning a better way to live. I feel as if a ton of bricks has been lifted from my shoulders. Thought for today: I do not have to let someone's reactions to my changed behavior discourage me from doing something good for me. I will choose to set healthy boundaries. If others put me into emotional bondage, my boundaries are not yet defined. And that's from Unknown. Comes from our sesh reading, Sharing Experience, Strength, and Hope.
Thank you, Denise. I just want to say real quick about boundaries. The group the group does. They help me so much with my boundaries. And when I've set boundaries, these were some things that I've actually gotten rid of. And one of those was pleasing. People pleasing. Not just pleasing, but people pleasing for the wrong reason. Covering up, worry, responsibility for others, trying to keep someone else clean or sober. And then, of course, isolation. I got rid of that also. But in the group, I found out that I'm not alone. And the changes come from me. The group is a safe haven for me. They've helped me set my boundaries. And they have taught me that it is not my job to tell someone else how to live their life. And I'm talking about someone that's 18 years old and above. I understand we have to have parenting skills. Some of the things that I've got from the group and also from Boundaries is serenity, have less anxiety, a lot less anger, and the weight of the world was lifted off in a lot of areas. I also learned with Boundaries and not making judgments, and I've also learned how my boundaries affect my family. But anyway, that's some things that Boundaries have done for me. When I go to set boundaries, this is one thing that really bothered me. I worried more about somebody else's feelings than I did setting those boundaries. I wouldn't set them because I was worried about their feelings. But I also learned how to mean what I say and not be mean in how I say it. And I've also learned to be kind and to use facts and not threats. I've got one more reading I want us to do. And I also had one more thing too that see if I find it right quick. Yeah. A boundary without consequences. And boundary without consequences, I like this. I actually read it. Somebody else wrote it. I didn't. A boundary without consequences is just nagging. So if you don't put something behind it, all you're doing is nagging. And I'm going to ask Dan, if he would. Ron, would you read this for me? Sure. Yeah, I'll get Ron to read it instead of Dan. Let me get it set right quick. Find it in my notes. This is my favorite reading in the sesh book, and it actually has to do with boundaries. Actually, it's limits and boundaries. And come on up, Ron. We'll let you read this for us. And then we will have the gifts of the program and go from there. 279. Yeah, this is my favorite reading in that whole book.
No pressure. I'm Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Limits. Once upon a time, there was a desert nomad with a camel. When night fell, the nomad pitched his tent near an oasis, tied his camel to a stake, and snuggled down. After a few hours, the camel poked his head into the tent. "Excuse me, master," he said, "but I am so cold out here. May I please put my head into your tent to keep it warm?" The nomad, tired but agreeable, said, "Yes, but only your head. There is barely enough room for me in here." The nomad returned to sleep. Another hour passed, and the camel woke him up again. "Oh, master, my front legs are so cold. Please, may I put them in your tent?" The camel pleaded. The nomad, exhausted and annoyed, said, "Yes, but that is all. No more. I am pushed against the side of the tent already." The nomad yawned and returned to sleep. An hour later, the camel woke him up once more. "Master, my hump is so cold. I can't stop shivering. May I bring in my hump?" he begged. "For God's sake," cried the nomad, "bring in your blasted hump. Let me sleep. I cannot bear these constant awakenings." He grabbed his blanket, rolled over, and returned to sleep. A few hours later, the nomad awoke and was freezing. He was outside of his tent, and the camel was completely inside of it, toasty and warm. I am that nomad. The tent is my recovery, and the camel is my disease. The moment I begin to obsess about the addict, I am letting in the head of my disease. When I tell the addict how to run his life, I am letting in the front legs of my disease. When I do things for the addict that he can do for himself, I am letting in the hump of my disease. Thought for today. Now I know if I do not draw my boundaries Now I know if I do not draw my boundaries tightly and keep my disease firmly outside the tent of my recovery, I may be on the way to relapse. Good fences make good neighbors. Robert Frost.
Thank you. We will be around to answer any questions or just shoot the breeze with you after we get through. And we'll have, Dan, I think, has the gifts of the program. We'll have that. And then we'll try to circle up and close with the group serenity prayer. Anybody else have anything they want to contribute? Okay, thank you.
I'm Dan.
Hi, Diane.
Gifts of the Nar-Anon program. When we approach the process of recovery with honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to apply the principles of the 12 steps to our lives, we will soon begin to see the rewards. We will become able to surrender our self-defeating behavior. We will find that we have the strength and insight to make good choices for ourselves. Our ability to act positively on behalf of our health, jobs, families, and bank accounts will amaze us. Excuse me. We will find that others are doing for themselves which previously we thought we had to do for them. Our ability to give and receive love will expand tremendously, and will become increasingly available for loving relationships with others. We will recover the feeling of joy. We will become more honest with ourselves and experience a new comfort in our intimate relationships. We will feel the security that arises from true fellowship with others in the program, knowing that we are loved and accepted just as we are. Feelings of failure and inadequacy will be replaced by self-confidence and independence of spirit. We will no longer depend on other people to provide us with an identity or a sense of self-worth. We will find the courage to be true to ourselves. We will know peace of mind and feel a stronger connection with the higher power of our understanding. And a hope will turn to faith that God is really working in our lives as we explore the wonders of serenity, dignity, and emotional growth.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, we will gather around. We will have the group serenity prayer. God,
Grant us serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference, just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. If you won't, get it done.
There's a step.
that's good.
Dude. Nap down, buddy.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
That sounds good.
I like that story.
Yeah, you can watch me meditate on the inside of my eyelids.